Our second webinar of 2024 was around AI readiness, supporting our network navigate to tomorrow's technology landscape today. I was joined by the awesome Richard Stirling, CEO of Oxford Insights, where we discuss AI readiness, an index for change, and setting yourself up for AI success. The webinar series aims to connect you with industry thought leaders to answer the questions that are going through your head at the moment. We hope you enjoy this webinar, and hopefully we'll see you at our next one.
For those new faces who don't know me or LaFosse, my name is George Davies and I head up LaFosse's change and transformation practice. We support senior change executives from a diverse background, industries, as well as organisations to deliver complex change through building high-performing and sustainable capabilities. Joining me today is Richard Stirling, CEO of Oxford Insights. Richard, could you share a little bit more about you and your work at Oxford Insights?
Yep. So I started my career as a civil servant, so I spent my time working in the Treasury and the Cabinet Office. But then that was when I got really interested in data. Then went to the Open Data Institute, where I headed up their public sector practice, their international work, and their startup program. And 6 years ago, well, maybe almost 7 now, actually. Set up Oxford Insights to explore this question of like, how can AI transform organizations? And that's what we've been doing ever since, really. So we've created the world's first AI Readiness Index. We work with the World Bank, the UN, Latin American Development Bank, as well as organizations like, had teams in the Foreign Office, in DWP, in Ministry of Justice, looking at how AI can transform those systems. But yeah, so can talk more, but I suspect you want to get onto the questions, George.
Nice. Sounds really good. I think it's fair to say that the growth of artificial intelligence has been exponential over the past few years. Transforming various aspects of society is certainly a conversation or a topic of conversation I'm hearing a huge amount. Initially emerging as a concept, I believe, in the mid-20th century, AI has certainly evolved from a simple rule-based system to complex algorithms powered by machine learning as well as neural networks. With this rapid growth, I think it's fair to say comes a lot of ethical as well as societal challenges, including concerns about job displacement, biases in the algorithms, as well as privacy issues. Despite these challenges, though, it's fair to say that the trajectory of AI continues to rise and is promising further innovation and disruption for the years to come. So the real question we're trying to unlock is how can we ensure that we're ready for it? So Richard, my first sort of question for you is, what are the key sort of indicators or criteria you use to assess an organization's readiness for AI adoption?
So we have different tools that assess like a country's readiness, but also an organization's readiness. And for that organization, what we're looking at is does the organization have the right governance and management systems in place for dealing with AI? Because if you've got a very risk-averse organization, that's one thing. If you've got somebody who really embraces innovation, that's another. And you need to have the governance process in place around deployment of AI that reflects that risk profile. The second thing we look for is around the technology and skills, because obviously if you're going to build an AI system or harness an AI system, you need to have the right technology infrastructure inside the organization, and you need to be able to have the skills to either build or deploy in an appropriate way. And the third, and like in my mind, like one of the most important pillars that we look at is data and infrastructure, because frankly, if you've got rubbish data or don't have the data needed, you really will struggle to deploy an AI system that actually solves a problem for you, rather than just giving you something generic from what you'd find on the web. So our assessment goes on those 3 pillars, does like a maturity model for that, and then we lead into some recommendations as to how those things can be improved.
Nice. And I speak to a real diverse range of organisations from both the public as well as the private sector, and I think everyone's slightly got a different measure on how good their data landscape is. What does their enterprise architecture look like? How would you, or how could an organisation typically evaluate their existing data infrastructure and really sort of get to understand whether it's suitable for AI implementation?
So when you're looking at your data infrastructure, the first thing that you really want to do is think about the problem that you're looking to model. So think about what's the thing you're trying to solve, because it's not whether a data infrastructure is good or bad, it's about whether it's good for a purpose. So the first thing to do is to really hone in on that purpose and think about, use that almost as the core for unlocking, like what's the data infrastructure got to be to support that. And the types of things that you look at then when you're thinking about, like, is this appropriate for the purpose, is have you got all of the data available that you need to be able to solve it? Or do you need to go outside and bring in data from third parties? If you've got all of the data, well, how is it going to be accessed? Like what's the level of granularity? Do you have APIs that people can query against? Is it only available in static form? Etc. Like you've then got like the types of databases it's held in, and there are various techniques that you can use to sort of work this through. We are doing this for a client at the moment, and one of the things that we're using the service maps as a way of like understanding where data feeds into the model, and then what's the ask of the data infrastructure underneath that, and then where can it be augmented by bringing in data from third parties.
Nice. And I guess if an organisation starting from scratch, so ground zero, what's the most important thing they should do first?
So if you're starting from absolute zero, first thing, think about the problem, then think about the type of AI solution that you want to deploy. So which of the models are appropriate. I mean, everybody's talking about LLMs at the moment, but they're not always the most appropriate model to use. Sometimes machine learning is more appropriate. Sometimes it might be a natural language processing. There are other types as well, but think about that, the way in which you want the AI to act, the types of risks you're happy to adopt, and then build up the system from there. So think about the compute that you require, whether this is going to be a sustained thing or a one-off. So whether you should be pulling in compute resources from the cloud, or whether you should have it on premises. The list goes on.
Nice. And you sort of touched upon risk and risk management. I think there's a lot of talk, isn't there, around the efficacy of AI and how organisations should and shouldn't be using it within their sort of operational environment. What does or can you share some insights into how organisations can effectively manage those risks associated with implementing AI, such as sort of cybersecurity threats or the privacy concerns that individuals may have?
So I mean, you raised two of the like really interesting and risks that there are in deploying AI at the moment. So picking up on the privacy concern, then that's something that needs to be carefully managed, because if for example you I don't think anybody's proposing to do this, but if for example you loaded up all of your personal data into an LLM so that it could be queried via a chatbot, so it made it more responsive, what you're doing is you're also opening up a new vector of attack. So you're opening up a new way in which all of that personal data can then be taken out of your business or out of your organization. And that needs to be protected against, possibly by not doing that in the first place. That's a sort of the most extreme end of the cybersecurity. But it also, you take that type of attack and then put it into, let's say, an operational system, which is churning away in the background, and very successfully is making like a meaningful difference to the business. So it's maybe adding 5% 5% reduction in cost, or is opening up new markets. An attacker can also come in and disrupt that system in the same way. So again, you need to think about like how that model is being trained, how it can be accessed, and make sure you've got the appropriate controls around that. More generally, like as you're taking an AI system through from experimentation through into live, then there needs to be a stage where you think about like what the consequences are of deployment, the way it will work, the types of errors that the system will make, because one of the ways in which an AI assistant is different from a human assistant is that they make mistakes in different ways. So in many ways, they're very sort of intuitive to work with, particularly like LLMs are very intuitive to work with. In many ways, they're not, because you think you're dealing with something that you understand, but then like it makes mistakes in different ways. So when you're going through from experimentation to live, it's important to sit down and take stock and think about all of the ways in which this system is going to interact, all of the ways it could go wrong, and what the mitigation is against each of those things.
Nice. And in your experience, sort of what are the most sort of effective ways of organisations to sort of address those ethical considerations and sort of biases in AI systems?
So that's the ethical considerations. Again, for me, fall into that like risk category of like it's all about making sure that you don't have an inappropriate use of AI, or you don't deploy something into live that really shouldn't. And for me, I think that the ethical AI principles that the OECD have created are actually pretty good. They've been created so that countries can think about like, should we be using AI here? But actually, I think they translate pretty well into the private sector and into organizations as well. So when you're deploying AI, you should think like, can we explain how this is working? Can we explain how decisions are being taken? Not a straight like linear process, because frankly, many of the AI systems at the moment are a bit of a black box. But for example, like if say we've taken this decision for this reason, this reason, this reason, or here are the data sets that went in, and here's what comes out the other end. Making sure that there is a clear accountability loop. So if something starts to go wrong, then it's clear who's responsible and what actions get taken. And making sure that the system itself is robust and has the right safety mechanisms around it. I mean, we touched on this in the risk section earlier, but you want to make sure that your AI system has been tested, is performing as expected, and probably have some like clear gating points of like it must be 99% accurate before it goes into live, or like 7 nines. That's the level of accuracy we're looking for here, so that you've taken a conscious decision about how robust this system needs to be before you're deploying it into live, and you've got a plan of action for what you'll do if when it hits live, it's not working as expected.
Nice, John. I see you popped your hand up, so it sounds like you've got a question.
Yes, indeed. I just wanted to, I didn't want to interrupt the floor too much, but just wanted to step back a little bit to the maturity models you mentioned, Richard, and I'm wondering, how are you seeing your clients? I mean, I guess say a year ago, a lot of people have been experimenting with large language models, AI generally. Are you seeing a big change now in how people are moving along that maturity curve, particularly more mainstream organizations?
Well, I think as you say, a year ago, there was lots of experimentation and people going, this is a really exciting technology. It's a massive breakthrough. It seems to do so much. What does it actually do for me? And I think, a year ago, it was lots of little micro experiments. Today, you see the result of that experimentation with lots of the attempts falling away, but also some people going, actually, this is how it is operationally useful for me today, or the LLMs running as like was trying to avoid the jargon or the marketing phrase, but like running as a co-pilot or alongside. So it doesn't in any way replace a person, but it does make your job like 5% easier. There are, when you're doing a presentation, there's the like, do you want to have a computer decide, make some suggestions as to how to make this look prettier for you? That sort of stuff makes it a lot better. Having automatic transcription, as I'm sure George has got running on this, again, like it makes life better, easier. Is it like the Damascene revelation that people were worried it might be a year ago? No, but it is starting to be useful. And there are then other areas, particularly with self-trained data, where you can start using LLMs in like more operational ways or ways that deliver greater value. Unfortunately, you're muted, George.
That always helps if I take myself off mute, doesn't it? What are you? Are there any likely implications for organisations if they ignore AI? What do you think what will happen to those organisations who don't sort of utilise AI within their organisations?
So that's always the killer question. I think it depends on the organisation. There are some where the AI might not be hugely useful. But if you look at the types of organizations that are starting to embrace it, so in the services sector, in knowledge economy, it's quite clear that the choice is not that the firm of the future may not be entirely AI powered, but it's certainly going to be AI augmented. And the fact that it is a near universal offer in some places, like there's just no option to get the non-AI version. It's the sort of AI augmented version or pay 3 times as much. That the firms who don't embrace and don't think about what this future looks like are going to find it increasingly difficult to compete. And that's why, for me, like everybody should be on that journey that we were just talking about, of like doing the experimentation, trying to find the areas where it will add value within your business, lean into those, and then try and grow them through into the as is. I know it's certainly what I'm doing in my own business, so I'm not just sort of like talking about it. I'm also trying to learn that within my own field.
Nice, Adrian. It looks like you've got both hands up, sir.
I don't know. I don't have managed to have both hands up. Have you got any advice for how you bridge the excitement on the one hand with the reality of budgeting at the moment? So what we're facing into is a lot of excitement about this. Clearly, user cases coming through, but actually the budgets for lots of reasons across from public sector. Have you got any sort of advice around how you bridge that? Because we recognise there's a lot of efficiency we can drive out of this, and therefore make the function a lot more efficient, but we don't have that input budget to do that.
So here, I think I think it would be naive to underestimate the amount of budget pressure there is in the public sector at the moment. Like, it's just going to be brutal, tough. Lots of projects with a good value for money case are getting shelved, regardless of whether or not they're AI, right? Like, that's just happening all over the place. But given you asked about AI projects, I would say it's important to take them through that experimentation process. So acknowledge that there's going to be some things that you try that don't work, and that means you've got to fail cheap.
Yeah.
And then as you don't fail, but then succeed on one or two, think about how you scale them up, and then apply pressure for them to deliver financial results. Because if they're being deployed because there's an efficiency saving, then make sure you harvest the efficiency saving, and that's part of the success criteria for a project. And I think that's, if I step away from AI a little bit up to digital, I think that's one of the ways in which the public sector over the last 5-10 years could have been a little bit tighter, is about like making sure that where we're doing a digital transformation because it leads to a better customer experience and some operational savings, that we don't just stop at the better customer experience, but we also harvest the operational savings.
Okay.
And that's how I would personally do it. And then like once you've got a few in the bag that show that you invest X here and you do genuinely get 2X out at the end, it's easier to have those conversations with finance directors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Ash, you look like you've got your hand up as well, sir.
Hello. I kind of got an opinion on my question, but I will ask it as a question, right? When you talked about risk profile or any of the factors, why do you think, or what are you seeing is different with AI than any other technology that anyone needs to adopt? Or could adopt?
So without trying to second guess your opinion, because that's always the temptation with that type of leader.
Sorry.
I think that there are some areas of commonality between AI and other bits of technology. So you should be asking yourselves the same questions. The bits that I think which are different, which is I think what you were trying to ask, is I think that the error distribution of AI is different and non-intuitive to other technologies. So, and what do I mean by that? I mean that if we were talking about AI or process automation 8 to 10 years ago, there would have been a branch and a sort of tree that you could follow, a decision tree. And you could go, so I understand this logic and I can track it through, and I can very easily model the type of the distribution of outcome that I will get given this level of this type of input. And if you saw results that you didn't expect, you could then walk back and see where in the tree you'd made a mistake. With machine learning, that stopped being true. It was just a black box. And the distribution of errors you got out of it were not intuitive. So you couldn't just look at it and go, well, I think this is the type of error we'll get. You needed to sort of count the results. And there are various cases of part of the problem is that only the errors in the public sector tend to get reported. So lots of the sort of counterexamples are public sector counterexamples, but they exist in the private sector as well. It's just they're not as public. There are cases of like judicial decisions in the United States where they use machine learning and you accidentally created a racist model. But you could re-engineer, like here's the distribution and then work out that the model was racist. With things like LLMs, building on machine learning, you've got the same problem but confounded again, like this. And I just think that one of the ways in which an organization embracing AI and trying to bring that innovation through could trip up is applying intuitive understanding of how the world works based on 30, 40 years worth of operational experience, which just isn't the way that the innovation that they're bringing through will perform. And so that's why I'm saying there should be an explicit gating where the question is asked of the people bringing the innovation through, how is this going to break? What type of errors are we going to see? How have you thought about this? How that's going to get trapped? What happens if you're wrong? When will we know? And then what do we do about it? Like, do you pull out of live, or is there an easy ability to trap it? Or do we go back and retrain based on richer data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like it's the taking stock point where you start having those conversations But what I'm trying to say is you almost like explicitly park some of your prior understanding of how these types of things work. Because even if you've got an aggregate a 5% error rate, it's probably a different 5% to the one you're replacing it with. Sorry, does that give you a proper answer to your question?
I'm not sure how much time I'm allowed because I'm enjoying this, but thank you for your response. But I've never heard of I like the word error distribution because I think I misunderstood it when you said it, but I quite liked it in the format. My response is I think I've understood, but my response is kind of if we wheel right back and let's assume AI is like the word cloud or like the word internet or like the word, it's just another word. And like when you started off with your opening thing about risk, skills, and have you got the data and infrastructure? What I'm intrigued with is that, like you said, the word black box, the amount of times I've heard someone say to me with any technology innovation, it's a black box, right? I'm interested to know what is my question is kind of like why is AI any different to any other organization saying, right, oh, I got now another, let's use your word, black box that I now have to understand. Should I embrace it? What is it? What problem can it solve? Can I afford it? All of those standard questions, because your risk one at the top is the key one here, because actually it's like, does anyone want to be brave enough to try? Because most of these things won't have a business case that makes any sense day one, right? Because they don't understand it. Anyway, I've said a few things. I'm interested. You're responding, which is kind of part of the reason I'm saying it.
Yeah. So I think that list of questions is exactly the right one you should be asking, because they're the ones that help stand up the business case. And if you don't have a business case for doing something, then it should never be like it's. One of the conversations earlier was like, how do you deploy this in a world with no budgets? Like, nobody has free money. Like, you shouldn't be deploying. It's really difficult to deploy something.
Just on that one though, Richard. I'm interested because it's like the amount of new technologies. If you could create a business case, the reality is that business case is and proven historically to be flawed, because the fact is you're basing it on, let's just take new skills, right? Let's say we needed new skills to help us do AI. You don't know how long it's going to take to hire them, how much they're going to cost, whether you can hire them at the right pace against your time commitment in the business case. So I get the business case. You wouldn't do something going, oh my God, this is going to be disastrous. But the reality of any new technology adoption is that the business case rarely ever is true. If you look over your shoulder to any other technical adoption, there are tons. So I get the business case thing. I understand is a nice to do, but I suppose I'm still interested to understand why outside of there's a lot of hype with AI. What is the difference for an organization if they need to try and adopt this new technology? I'm not trying to give you a hard time, by the way. If it comes across that way, it's not supposed to be. I'm passionate about the topic.
So there is a lot of generality of approach with AI and other technologies. Like, if we were talking about, you said cloud, like the types of questions you would ask about your cloud migration would be similar to the questions that you ask about AI at the moment. The specific skills are going to be different, because for cloud you're looking for network engineers and sysops or similar types of roles. And then looking at the way that you built your services so that they could scale in multiple ways, etc. With AI, it's really useful to have around some mathematicians, because frankly, that gets you closer to the way in which this works. But people have just gone through data science transformations. They probably got some mathematicians knocking about the place. But it's this, for me, it's the specifics of like, what would you need to be able to implement it, and hence our second pillar around the technology and the skills, because I think most organizations get some variant between okay and sort of middling. Very few have excellent in the deployment, and that's kind of what you would expect for a new technology that has an awful lot of hype around it. They all get sucked into specialist organizations. But as we know from previous rounds of rollout, where's the big win? The big win is in adoption, because that's where 95% of the economy is. I feel like we could continue this conversation for longer, but George probably wants us to move on to the next question.
No, I think we're going to run out of time. Full stop. And certainly, I think AI readiness could be a conversation that we could continue for a lot longer. I guess, Richard, if people want to contact you to explore how you may be able to support them or keep the conversation going, how could people get in touch with you?
Best way of getting in touch, just drop me a line. I'm available on Twitter, or X, as I think we're meant to call it now, at RCHARDS. You can also get me at richard@oxfordinsights.com. And if you want to read a bit more of the material that we've been talking about today, there's loads of links on oxfordinsights.com to our work on AI readiness. Like, we probably overshare. There's probably some sort of commercial person upset for me for sharing too much of our material openly, but we're trying to share the knowledge.
Sounds good. I will. I'll follow up with everyone as well and share the link to Richard's website. I'm conscious equally we can stay on the call after a couple of minutes after this if anyone does have any other sort of burning questions to ask. Really excitingly, our next webinar is on the 3rd of May at the same time, and is about a subject very close to my heart, which is mental health. Charles Ewan, the CIO at the Met Office, will be discussing his sort of mental health journey and how he continues to navigate it all within high pressure change environments. We'll stay on the call for a little bit longer, but thank you everyone for joining us, and hope you have a great weekend once it arrives.
Hi, I really hope you enjoyed our webinar around AI readiness, and it answered some of those questions that are going on in your head at the moment. Our next webinar is all around mental wellbeing and change. It's a subject that's really close to my heart. It's going to be happening on the 3rd of May at 12:30 again. Charlie Ewan, the CIO at the Met Office, as well as myself, will discuss our experiences of all things mental health, sharing those experiences, looking to try and break the stigma, and again, answer those questions that are going on in your head at the moment. Join us on Friday, the 3rd of May at 12:30. Hopefully we'll see you there.